Hey guys, welcome back to a. This always happens to me. I was trying to get the
Wrong
music
with
ready.
you.
I was trying to get the music ready. I was clicking other buttons.
Restart. Do it again.
And action.
Hey guys, welcome back to another weekly recap episode. This episode is going to go over episodes 11 and 12. They're up on YouTube now, as well as episode 13 because I'm a little bit ahead of schedule and I'm doing well with that. So,
But we're not going over 13 today.
no.
We're just, yeah.
But
Don't scare me like that.
Sorry, for you guys watching.
We'll be going
what's up?
over
Like my notes.
11 and 12.
No, we're doing 2 per episode. This episode is 11 and 12. It's pretty much the end. It's the big climax, I guess, of Anzu's character, and his whole story. Per usual, you've got me, and then you've got Jacob, our DM. We've got Zach, our moderator, and our question person. And
Zach,
then
our number one fan.
Our number
That's
one
me.
fan. And then we've got Hunter. Again, he was on 2 episodes ago, but this is his story arc, so we got to get him on to ask some more questions and
He's
just
back.
get his input. All right, so how this is gonna work? Same thing as always. I'm gonna go over the recap part of the episode and re-explain what happens in episode 11 and 12. Then we're gonna get into some questions from Zach for Hunter, and I believe he might have a couple. We're gonna get some questions from Zach for the group, and then for Hunter. And then I think there might be
You're
a couple.
killing it, man. Killing it.
I'm doing great today. And then I believe he might have some questions for me because we haven't gone over Animas yet. But he has some stuff coming up later as well. So, all right. So that was a shaky start. Here we go, though. Episode 11. We had started out by all of us jumped into a portal, and in random locations, we all had appeared either with one of the other group members or alone. Me and Hunter ended up in the basement of an old tavern. Jacob, you might have to help me with this one. Braun ended up in an arena. Did someone end up with him, or was he alone? Zygon.
He's alone. And
Okay.
then Zygon was in a wyvern aviary,
And then they ended up
and then they
meeting
found
up.
each other.
And then
Yeah.
Abby and Lochnar ended up landing together somewhere. I don't know where they were.
They were in like a general goods store.
Okay, yeah. So that's where we left off last episode, in episode 10. So episode 11, we all start off there. Basically, Abby's character Thea had been touched on the shoulder by a mysterious creature, and it ends up being a mind flayer, but they're not evil. It's these 2 mind flayers that had found them, and they're actually good. They help out Thea and Lochnar in getting away from these like ghouls that are running through the city. The city, by the way, is called Mythather. Jacob can explain that later. It's a ruined city. It's
Notes.
it's a ruined city. It's not up and running anymore. So it's very like apocalyptic feeling when we're running through it. So yeah, Lochnar and Thea, they get with these mind flayers and they're walking around trying to find us. Braun and Zygon find each other and they have to sneak their way past some of the ghouls. Me and Anzu are sitting in the basement of a tavern with Cube drinking alcohol.
I'm bathing in it, actually.
Yes, Anzu decides to jump into a giant barrel of old ale, and we're chilling out. We're just kind of waiting. Eventually, some ghouls show up at the door, and Anzu shields us with his what's that spell? What's the
Leoman's Tiny Hut.
Yes, Leoman's Tiny Hut, which means nothing can get in as long as Anzu is holding concentration. So we're chilling in that.
Time out. Can we talk about the changing colors of the wall hut thing?
Yeah. Well, hold
So-
on. Wait. Let me explain. We can explain that
Okay.
right after I go
Alright.
through this. Okay, so
Alright.
eventually the whole group ends up finding each other, and then they find their way to me and Anzu, who are sitting in this basement, and they kill the ghouls. And we all kind of like figure out what to do from there. And it turns out the mind flayers had been staying in this magical shop. So we go to the magic shop with them. We make our plan, where we had just seen at the top of the mountain is where basically this whole like situation was happening, and the mountain was like overlooking the city. So we knew where we needed to go. We were now making a plan. Within this magic shop, we found a few magical items. Those being an Ioun stone, which Hunter ended up giving to me. I guess I should say Anzu ended up giving an Animas. Anzu also talked to the Mind Flayers and ended up getting a couple objects from them, one being this little statue that turns into a big tower that you can use during combat, the other being a Displacer Cloak, which you can use for enemies to have disadvantage against you. And then I think the last thing we got was a Medallion of Thoughts, which basically allows you to use the mind reading spell. So from there, we get into the end of episode 11, which basically we're kind of figuring out, hey, we need to get to the top of this mountain. We're kind of like throwing some stuff around, just getting prepared. And then Thea I think it was Thea, right? Who just pulled out this little jar of dirt and threw it on the ground, and it turned into this thousands of foot tall tree and just blew up in our faces. I got caught on the tree, went straight to the top, and that's where we ended episode 11. Episode 12, I could see where we needed to go from the top of the tree, so I turned into a giant eagle, went down to the bottom, we picked everyone up, went up to the top, and then we all walked up to the top of the mountain where there was a big room, and there happened to be this big like glob that was kind of like what Anzu's little character cube that he now has on his finger. It's like a bigger version of that. And then also Cran was up there casting some sort of spell with Meryl, who is Thea's little sister. And Meryl was being used as a source of power, as well as all the other students and teachers that we had been looking for this whole time were in the room lined up against the walls, but they were incapacitated. And basically that's where we started the big boss fight. Pretty quickly, I know this pissed Jacob off, but it honestly helped us a lot. Pretty quickly, Abby was able to use a banishment spell on Cran, getting him out of the picture for 10 rounds. And then we were fighting this glob. The big thing for us was there's also a big crystal that was the source of power, and every round a section of the students and teachers would disappear due to the use of power. So we went through the whole fight. We ended up finally getting to a point where we honestly lost a lot of students and teachers in this fight, and it sucked to watch. Like, I think it was pretty sucky, especially that Hunter's character Anzu was losing a lot of these people that he was supposed to be accountable for. And so we ended up defeating the big glob of whatever it was. I forget what it's called. Oblex. We ended up defeating the Oblex, and then we destroy this crystal, but it was too late, and this portal opened up, and a Baylor of the Abyss came out, which is basically a general, like a demon general of the Abyss. And he popped out. He wasn't fully formed, but he was still a demon general, and that was the end of episode 12. And Cran popped back in, and immediately we were all like, well, shit. So, I think the only other thing would be that Meryl, once we broke the crystal, Meryl got hit by a shard, her eyes turned purple, and we figure out that a little bit later that eventually it has something to do with the Moonweaver's power, but that is more on Abby's storyline, so we can talk to her about that next time she's on. Episode 11 and 12, the big story arc for this chunk of Anzu's story, because this isn't the end of Anzu's story, don't worry, but that was the end of this very big part of like kind of us like knowing who Anzu is. He's the professor of this college that he's been gone for a while from, and now we're back, but there was some stuff going wrong, and then we had to go through this whole situation. So getting into the episode, Zach, what are your first questions?
We'll keep form and go straight to Jacob
first.
first.
Wait, you want to talk about the colors? The colors of the...
Yeah. Let's talk about the colors.
Yeah, so I think at the time, Anzu was super drunk. And obviously when you're drunk, you don't really perceive things as a threat, right? It's more cute. So I think that's a very Anzu thing to do, is to just have like a, not really a disco party, but at least the colors of one shining around. I
just like Caleb / Animas just like freaking out You
He does that a lot.
Change it to this color, and you're like, no. I like this color better.
I was like, what's going on?
All right, so Jacob, we'll go to you. Ooh, first, I upgraded. That's the word. No longer looking at pieces of paper and looking down. Got it on my computer this time.
Ooh,
We're
look
moving
at
up
him,
in the
he's
world,
little-
boys. All right.
Technology.
Question 1 for you, Jacob. How do you decide what creatures the players will kind of come across? Not necessarily like the major creatures, but like kind of like smaller characters while they're like running around in the forest or something like that. Do you just kind of like pick a name out of the hat and kind of go with that, or?
So names I usually improvise, as most of you will notice during certain streams, like stinking. I hate it when they're like, "What's the bartender's name?" and I'm like, I don't think about that stuff. And there's so many names you can come up with one, but like character design wise, basically through this whole arc, I'd been hinting at mind flayers. So I knew that I at least wanted some of them to show up. But it's becoming almost tropey in D&D that mind flayers are evil, or they're like good and then they're secretly evil. So I wanted to make actually good mind flayers, but the only way you can really do that is if they are not connected to the Elder Brain. So I had to kill the Elder Brain. And the ghoul stuff and all of that, there's some details that the players don't know yet about that I do not want to disclose, so that I'll just leave that there. But yeah, it's mainly just like what fits the setting or the story, and that's how I go.
Gotcha. Next question, I guess we'll just go straight into it. So last week, conveniently enough, we talked about kind of your level up system. And then this week we saw Thea leveled up. I guess what level is she at now, and kind of what is that in comparison to kind of all the other players?
I think, did she go to level 8?
She was level
Is
8.
that
She was level 9 as a character, but she took 1 level in Rogue also, so she's a level 8 cleric as of this this section of episodes, and a level 1 rogue. But yeah, she's level 9
was
overall.
she was only temporarily a higher level than the other players, because when I leveled everyone else, I didn't level her.
Okay.
And I did that so that 1, they kind of all stay close, but 2, the reason I wanted to level Thea prior was because I kind of wanted to give a hint that the crystal they found was somehow connected to the Moonweaver, and what better way than to have it basically absorbed into Thea, because it's so concentrated of the Moonweaver's magic. So it was more like a narrative choice than it was like a gameplay choice.
Gotcha. And then in episode 12, you played as Lochnar. Corey wasn't there. So how do you approach kind of subbing in for a player? Do you play the character as you would play that character, or do you kind of try to play it, let's say, like as Corey would play Lochnar?
If anyone could play Lochnar like Corey plays Lochnar, but when I play a player character, I either write them out of the story, or I play them very minimal, so they do not really talk much, and they basically only fight. And I do that because I don't know, like, for example, Caleb might have a different motivation for Animus than I would, and he knows the character better than I do. So I don't want to make a decision for him to then have him come back and be like, well, I wouldn't have done that. So it just makes things simpler if you just make them basically NPCs that don't interact much.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed, like in the fight with Cran, Lochnar basically charged through that wall of fire. I guess, is that something that that you would think that Corey would do as Lochnar, if that makes sense?
I don't know if Corey would do it as Lochnar, but I know that Lochnar would probably do it.
Okay.
I also know that like Lochnar does not really back down from fights, and he was raging at the time, so he's not necessarily thinking 100% rationally. So I thought it was an appropriate choice. And I mean, he didn't die, so that was cool.
It's fair.
Yeah, I think
So I
I got confused by that, and I was like, I think I asked Jacob, would Lochnar really do that? He's like, yeah, I think so. And I was like, well, I mean, realistically, a barbarian in that situation with Lochnar's mindset would probably honestly do that because he likes to fight. So, that was
And like, I think Lochnar, just the way Corey plays Lochnar, Lochnar is not afraid of like danger. He's not gonna like I think in one of the most recent episodes, he charged through a burning building. So I don't see how that's different than a Ring of Fire.
That's true.
Sure. That's fair enough. Man, I'm blowing through these questions quickly. Do you guys have any questions for Jacob?
Yeah,
not really.
questions from you guys. I want to see how my players are viewing the story.
We
'cause
we
I'm
talked
super
about
interested.
at the end of this story arc, we talked about a lot of this off camera, and like most of the stuff we talked about are pretty much answers you're getting from either watching the episodes or watching this weekly recap. So, I mean, I don't know if there's many questions we would have right now, but maybe next episode or the next episode of the weekly recap, because my character actually has some pretty major things that happen. No spoilers, but also spoilers. So
I think that means next question, Zach.
yeah.
All right, sounds good. We'll go to Hunter then, if you are ready, sir. Yeah, so we did that. Talked about the colors changing. So what were Andrew's thoughts kind of going into the fight against Cran?
So going into the fight against Cran, I wasn't really sure if we were gonna win or not. He is the headmaster of the college. And the thing with wizards specifically is that wizards, they tend to have really insane spells. So, like for example, he can banish you to another plane and fight everyone else without you. He can banish a couple of you guys to another plane. He can hit the whole crew with a fireball, and most of us would be almost half health. And I know going into that fight, we had to figure out what to do, and he probably was the best person to banish at the time, which is what Thea did, because he just has so much utility. Probably, I wasn't sure at the end what his level was or what spells he had, but playing as a wizard, you're almost like the utility knife of the crew. I mean, I have spells for blowing people up, I have spells for unlocking any door, I have spells for closing doors, I have spells for making sure no one's behind me, and I have spells to see everyone in the room. So I thought banishing him was the best choice we had. He was the #1 target at the time, and the cube was next. Unfortunately, we had to fight the Baylor too. So I think at that point we started biting off a bit too much.
I actually do have a question for Jacob.
All right, go for it.
Pulling off of that, was there any way we really could have stopped all those students and teachers from disappearing over time, or was it literally just like they were going to disappear up until the end of what we were doing?
Oh yeah, you could have stopped it.
Like, I felt like we tried pretty hard. Are you not going to tell us now that it's all over? You're not going to tell us was it the crystal the whole time that we had to destroy?
No, there's story implication.
Oh, is it stuff that we can't
Um,
know for the future?
well,
I guess
it's obvious.
so.
Cran
Well,
Cran is not the big bad.
Well,
is
yeah.
the main thing.
You
and
also
that,
said that Cran's whole like point was like he had reached his goal and he was so like happy with dying in that situation. So like I guess you probably do have plans for the future and of some extent with whatever happened there. But
yeah. So basically, like the crystal was a big deal, but there was 2 things you could have done to stop the spell, but the other one was very, very drastic.
Was it killing one of us? Killing ourselves?
Basically, you could either destroy the focus or destroy the thing that it was being channeled through.
Meryl.
So if you had killed Meryl, it would have stopped.
Yeah. And I think Abby would have been fighting against us at that point.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking, but I think as Anzu and like having, I guess an alumni, I don't know, he would definitely be against it because I knew killing Meryl would stop it, but he would never kill Meryl.
I think walking in and seeing the situation we were in, we all knew Meryl was like one of the things we had to stop. But at the same time, like, number one, there's only probably 2 characters in our whole group that would even think about like harming Meryl and possibly even killing her.
That's you and Zog.
It's questionably me too, because Animas is not trying to kill other people as much as my
Yeah, I don't think Animus would do it. I think the only one that you could have got to do it would be
Zygon. And like honestly, like my tendencies are like very base level neutral to almost top level evil, or like whatever switch that would be.
It goes chaotic,
level,
chaotic neutral into lawful evil.
Yeah.
Would basically be like the switch.
That's my switch. I'm right on the border there on my decision making, but I don't think I would ever. My biggest thing is that I'm not really trying to kill people. So like that was destroying the focus in the end stopped it, but also didn't stop it. So.
Well, you stopped something.
Yeah, I know. We stopped the disappearance of at least the last chunk. That was my main question. You don't have to answer anything else. I was just wondering about the disappearing, because I know you have more story implications for the future, so. Which also happens in episode 13. So come back for next week's weekly recap, or just watch episode 13 if you want to see what happens with the Baylor in the first 30 minutes of the show. So, all right, Zach.
Good deal. Last question for you, Hunter.
All we see is your forehead. I just want to let you know that.
I think that was intentional.
I know. I was asking him to move in a different way.
So you were talked out of trying to blow up that crystal there toward the end of that fight. I kind of want to know like what y'all's thoughts are on. I don't know, is that metagaming? Just like talking each other out of trying to do certain things.
Not really. It depends on how you talk them out.
Like, I think in the decision to blow up the relic, it was a debate of whether Anzu would do it or I would do it. Because I was under the belief that Anzu would do it to protect all of his students. Even if he did die, he would do it. Whereas everyone else wasn't sure about that.
Yeah.
And that was the struggle.
Well, you also didn't know that if you blew it up, if it would work, and you didn't know if you blew it up, if it would damage the others.
Yeah, that was our biggest. That was our biggest thing that we talked about. I think was the fact that like, Anzu, yes, he may sacrifice himself for the school that he helped build and that he just now found his way back to. But at the same time, Anzu's also a veteran of war and a very smart scholar, to the point where he's not just going to kill himself over a hunch. Like, if he dies, and this goes even farther than just him killing himself and getting rid of all the students in this room, he then has no chance of coming back and being the person to help us out, which I think was my main argument when I told him in game. I was like, hey, you don't know if this is going to help. If you die, your character's not going to be able to end this, and you are like the best character to end this, considering the fact that you know Cran better than everyone else. So it doesn't make much sense that Anzu would kill himself in that situation. But I don't know if it's metagaming as much as just like sometimes you do need to kind of talk through stuff like that, especially for Jacob as a DM. He can say something like, hey, I don't think your character would do that. I know that like my mindset kind of trails off to that sometimes, but
yeah, I think that's where I call the line. Is I kind of wait for Jacob's response of, no, I don't think your character would do that. But
I think ultimately, if you can give me a good enough argument for why I'd be fine with it because I am not the actor, I am the director. So
That's what I
if
like about Jacob is that he doesn't make our characters obsolete, right? Like I piss him off with counterspell a lot. Like if you think you hear him complain about it when we stream, just wait for him off stream and he's
it
still
gets much
complaining about
worse,
counterspell. But I mean,
I
the
threaten
simple
Hunter's
solution
life
for
with the whole
him
thing.
would to be like, oh well, if that's the case, I'm gonna put in 5 wizards that can also counterspell your counterspell.
Yeah.
But he doesn't because he realizes that if he does that, my character's obsolete.
Well, not only that, but like if you're fighting a group of zombies, there's not going to be a zombie wizard. Like
Right.
I don't, as much as I don't want my players to metagame, I can't metagame either. A group like now that the Flagon Slayers themselves are starting to gain kind of notoriety, if an organized group wanted to attack them, they would probably know a way to counter them. Because they're starting to be well known. But like when they were first starting out, for example, like Vesper being kidnapped, if the Flagon Slayers would have been well known at that point, the Myriad would have sent a crew specifically designed to counteract the Flagon Slayers.
Yeah.
But they didn't, so they didn't. And so it just has to make sense within the world. And now that they're gaining more notoriety, then yeah, they're probably going to face some stiffer challenge.
I mean, even with that, like I don't think any of our characters have put all of our cards on the table, especially as we just leveled up, and then I leveled up twice, which you'll see in the future. This is of course talking about our current point in the campaign, but it applies to all situations. Overall, it's like as you level up and as your characters get stronger and move from place to place, like you get different things and you gain different things, and there's different things that you like. If they came in fighting your group 2 weeks ago, they'd win. But if they came in fighting your group now, they still will have a hard chance, or like push your group a lot harder than other challenges, but they won't know a couple things that you might be able to use to your advantage. So I think another thing, bouncing off of that, the question with Anzu, I think that was also one of our last points that we've really been like kind of still on the edge. Like right when we started doing the online stuff, we were still on the edge of like getting like used to playing comfortably in like rooms online. And Hunter actually like was talking about like how he had these ideas for different characters, and he really wanted to play for the future and stuff. So I think that was something that he might have also had in his mind that day, is like, oh, I could send in Anzu, then I have another fun character to play or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of the other Flagon Slayers think that I am very suicidal, and it's not that.
I don't. I personally don't.
I don't think he's suicidal. I think that day he told us that he had other characters as a backup, and then he was like, I'm gonna run into this giant thing and blow up.
It's not necessarily that. I want a new character, but I think it is something that Anzu would do. Like he would touch a dark ball,
the dark hole,
like
yeah,
a pit of darkness that would suck out his finger. He would do that just because he's curious. He would do something.
Another thing that I'm interested to see is Anzu is actually very close to his goal. You guys basically have enough money now to make a guild hall,
which we are currently talking about. So,
yeah.
But let's not spoil that too much for the stream.
Well, my thought is what happens to the hero when they've gotten their goal?
He has other goals, right? I mean,
exactly. So, like, will
Anzu's
goal change?
Wow,
Hello,
no.
people.
What are you doing?
Well,
Geez, Zach, we look for professionalism.
oh wow, that I definitely haven't had that happen before.
Anyway, I'm interested to see how Anzu's goal changes because he is old. He is by far the oldest character in the group. So
Well, I
I'm
think
wondering how Hunter will play it.
his
Anzu's only got about 20 years left on his life. I mean, he's not.
Roughly 20 to 50, depending on lifestyle.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
and,
mean,
and that was my thing, is that, like, I feel like out of all the other guys, Anzu is the one that will most likely die first if he stays.
I'd
just because
also
he's
like
done his time. Everyone else is so young compared to him.
my technically my character will die within 30 years. Kenku only lasts
Unless you
60
finish
years.
your stuff. and
Unless I
then
finish
you won't.
certain things that allow me to. But yeah, so basically, overall, I mean, I think Anzu's whole goal is that he wants to leave something behind, which he's creating this guild to do. I think it doesn't. I don't know if it stops at building a guild hall. I think it stops when he's created that. Like, I mean, he can still go out and look for members that he wants to now run that guild, because the Flagon Slayers all still have different motives, and I don't know if Anzu knows that they'll all stick around to help him run the guild after we finish all of our quests together. So I think that's another big thing for him. But
I think a big thing, maybe Anzu as a character doesn't even know, is his desire for a family.
oh yeah,
Like
That is
Anzu's like main character motivation, at least from me reading the character, is belonging and community.
yeah,
And I think that might be like a side effect of his like, he was a war vet, then his entire adventuring party that he was originally part of is either dead, missing, or off and on a different plane.
yeah.
So I think like Anzu's life has just gone from like bad to worse, and the Flagon Slayers are now finally a group that is there. You know, they're dysfunctional, but they're there.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, playing Animus, Anzu's like one of the, as much as Anzu has some questionable situations that he gets himself in, he's also one of the people that almost holds the group together, like just overall, like as like more as a family than just a group, like because he does these like weird little comedic things, and he also like whenever, I can't spoil it, but
Nah, go
you're
ahead.
I'll just say this: you're very especially with you and Lochnar. If Lochnar was ever sad, not trying to spoil anything, you would go up and maybe like comfort
By
him
saying
in
that,
situation.
you spoil something.
Yeah. Lochnar's sad in the future, guys, for like a brief 10 minutes to I don't know, whatever.
But like he's almost like kind of like the dad
yeah,
in like a
Yeah.
sitcom or something, you know, like he just kind of fits that mold.
yeah,
Well, I mean, that's exactly true, because, like, if you think about it, one of his big goals is to, one, have a big family, and two, make the world a better place than when he came. Because obviously when he came, it was horrible. I mean, there was a huge war, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, if you think about it, he's raising a kid that's going to live for thousands of years, right? He's already proud of that. He's got a grandkid who's
A tree.
Tree.
Yeah, it was a tree. It was probably gonna live for like, I don't know, a couple hundred years and all that. And I think him discovering that his ex's, like his lover's niece, is now alive and in front of him, I think that gives him motivation now. And
Yeah, because like when we met Anzu as a character, he was very lost. He was doing drugs.
he was-
Yeah.
And he was just kind of rambling around.
he's kind of doing drugs.
And also in story, Anzu was like a level 20 wizard.
Mhm.
And then he just lost it all.
yeah,
So like, it's an interesting redemption arc, and I'm interested to see how Hunter plays it, and I'm also interested to see if Anzu does die, what the group would do, because I think there would be a lot of infighting. Because I think that Anzu is keeping Thea's suspicions of Animus and Zygon at bay, which is a big thing.
it is.
Um,
that is an ongoing thing that I even struggle with having to try to play, because I have to play my character how he would play, but at the same time I want the rest of the group to be able to trust me enough to be like, hey, this and this is going on, instead of like,
Alright, because I would say the biggest problem that Anzu has, as far as the team goes, is that he usually doesn't kill evil. He wants to fix it. He wants to turn evil into good. And that's his problem with Animus and Zygon. Is that, like,
honestly, Lochnar too. Like he likes to just kill things that just pop up anywhere. Braun and Anzu and Thea get along very well, and then Lochnar fits in on both sides. But like, we've had this conversation so many times that like, it is still ongoing that Animus and Zygon are very questionable. I mean, with the current story arc that you guys will see in the future, that's going on right now, it looks like Zygon actually might have some very different things going on with him. But for the most part, yeah, you're right. It's hard for you guys to trust our characters.
I honestly think, if anything, it'll be Zygon that leaves first because of his wife or kids.
We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. We can talk about that when we get there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm interested to see how everybody plays their characters because stuff's about to start ramping up.
Yeah. Zach, what are some more questions you got?
That's it for Hunter. I just got some for you, Caleb.
Oh, cool.
We're good with that.
Yeah.
So the intro kind of mentions kind of two things that kind of stick out to me. The first one is Keyleth. Can you go into kind of detail about kind of who that is?
Yeah.
What your relationship is, all that kind of stuff.
So basically, so people watching this will also most likely have heard of Critical Role, who they're pretty much the center point of streaming D&D online. And so their first campaign, they played it for 4 to 5 years, and they streamed. Hunter's gonna step out for a sec. They streamed for about 2.5 to 3 of those years, I believe, in their first campaign, which is the book we're playing in now, which is what Jacob has as our campaign book, is the Tal'Dorei book that Matthew Mercer helped create. So basically, I built in Keyleth as a character, me being a fan of Critical Role before we started the stream, and I really enjoyed playing Druid. I've played Druid before. I just never played it to the extent where I got to level it up so much. So I was like, I want to play a Druid through a whole campaign and have like this sick storyline behind him. And so I started off with a certain storyline, and then I started making it a little different, and that's where we got to the point where I made him be a slave who came to the material realm, and I was like, would he become a druid? And Jacob's like, well, you remember Keyleth, right? She's an Arashari, and she's still alive technically in this realm. And I was like, okay. So Animus pops out on the material plane, goes up the mountain, or lands at the base of the mountain of Zephyra, and Keyleth ends up finding him as he was probably a teenager at the time. And takes him up, and that's kind of like, from there I became one of the members of the Arashari and learned in the ways of a druid, and started trying to build power to go back and save my parents and stuff. So
yeah, and I was worried because I knew we were going to stream. I don't want people to compare us to Critical Role, and I also don't want people to think that we're just like riding on the coattails of a super successful company at this point. But from a story standpoint, we're about 200 years after their first campaign. So realistically, the only one that is alive is Keyleth. And I don't ever plan on her physically showing up, unless we get huge and can do a crossover with Critical Role.
The dream.
But
the dream.
Yeah, I don't plan on her ever physically showing up. She's more of just like a name drop. And for Critical Role fans that might be watching us, homage is different than ripping people off. And most of us who are on the stream have watched the entire first season of Critical Role, and are big fans. And we wanted to do, or I wanted us to do a campaign in Tal'Dorei, and I thought, what better way than doing it like later so that they're not around, but also there's still that like through line. And I mean, like, I just want to make it clear that like we're conscious of the fact that we are playing something that was created by another group, um,
But it's
but
awesome.
we're trying to make it our
It's-
own.
I mean, if you play any book from D&D, you're playing a book from what was created by D&D.
Yeah.
It's very hard and time-consuming to build an entire world. Like, props to Matthew Mercer and any other big DMs that have just created this whole world just completely by themselves with cities that run themselves with a government. Like, that's hard to do, and we were be looking
Crunch
at
for time.
crunch for time, and also just looking at how the Tal'Dorei book was. It's like, who wouldn't want to play it, you know? So that plays into our game, but not like I'm just sitting there only talking about Keyleth all the time. Also, the other thing with Keyleth, she's the headmaster. The only reason you would go on an Aramente, which is the current quest I'm on, would be usually to go to all the other three Ashari groups, go through their quests, and then come back and become the next headmaster. For my character, I'm not trying to become the next headmaster. I'm just on the Aramente for a very, very sole purpose to get strong enough to defeat this oncoming evil that even Keyleth has now had figured out when I had my character had told her in my backstory, of course. So
Cool. Yeah. So you answered my second question about asking about the Aramente. So we'll go into the last question. How do you guys as players kind of feel about kind of big cliffhangers like we saw at the end of episode 12 with the I don't remember what creature it was. Yeah,
Baylor.
that's what it was.
Baylor.
Yeah.
I like it. I also hate it. Sometimes, like, we obviously run on a 3-hour shift every week. So if we get to a point where Jacob's like, this would be too big of a fight, it sucks to stop, but at the same time, you know that next week you're going to start off on a great note. So, and
What about you, Hunter? What do you think?
It's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, for fights like that, they do usually end up going probably half or even more of the session themselves. So I get the need for it. Plus, props to him for working out the timing.
And I mean, as I've said before, we are basically all film majors. And one big thing is when you're writing a story, you want your structure to have cliffhangers. And with a overarching story like this, ending episodes on like and you all went to sleep is just kind of boring, in my opinion. Now sometimes we do that, but I also like to hint that there's a character that might be interesting in this place that you're at, or something like that. I also think, Zach, I'm going to reverse this question onto you. I think it helps the audience feel invested.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. I don't like stories that are just like, and then this. It's just like,
Yeah. Well, the way I kind of look at it, like as a fan, I mean, I kind of treat the episodes like a Netflix show that I'm watching. Like if it ends on a cliffhanger, I'm like, shit, I gotta watch the next episode, you know. So like, I mean, waiting for this next episode to come up on YouTube, or even like watching it live, having to wait that week. You know, it's it kind of makes me think about it for the week, and then it's like, I'm looking forward to Sunday. Here we go, let's go. So yeah,
See,
no,
Zach,
I
that's
enjoy
why
it.
we pay you the not bucks, because you're great at promoting the show.
Making so much money doing this.
so much. Don't even need a job,
That's right.
All right.
But yeah, if the party did say, hey man, my blood pressure is just too high right now, I need you to chill it, then I would. But until then, almost every episode will end on some sort of cliffhanger, whether the party knows it or not.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not gonna talk about future episodes. I almost did, but we can. That's for future episodes of the weekly recap. I think that's it for the night. Does anyone else have anything to say? Awesome. Well, thank you, Hunter, for joining us again. I know that you just moved and you've got work and stuff going on, but really helpful to have each of the characters, the character players on the show so that we can kind of just get through some questions for these weekly recaps, and it's not just me sitting in front of camera saying, this is what happened this week. So
Yeah, he can't even do that properly, so it'd be terrible.
Never prepared when I turn the camera on. I'm never prepared. But
he rehearses before.
No, I do not.
And then as soon as the camera comes on, he just blank.
Happens.
It's hilarious.
It's true, he actually does.
My god. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this week of the weekly recap. Check us out on Sunday nights. That's when we do our campaign. As well as look for...
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, please.
Yes, follow us on all of those. We're very close, as of the making of this video, very close to Twitch affiliate. So tell your friends, tell your family.
Then we can start selling out to companies.
Let's do it.
But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys for your support, and check us out next week. Thanks.